All right, I think I may have solved the problem here, but let's check again.
I think I may have solved the problem here.
So after all of that, my big problem was no more than the fact that just my one of my cords was not plugged in. It had nothing to do with the YouTube software. It had everything to do with the fact that one of my cords was not plugged in. So we're off to we're already in mid-season form, or we're off to an inauspicious beginning, depending on how you want to look at things. So it is Monday. It is 7:00. It is time for the Split Decision here on Facebook Live, not Facebook Live, actually, on YouTube. And that is where we're going to be going forward. Just to give everybody a little sense. And, so we haven't been on in a few weeks. 2 weeks ago, I was planning on being off. I had a dentist appointment, so no show. Last week, I came on and I'm ready to go. And I turn on my, I'm ready to go. I turn on my Facebook Live thing on the computer. I get it to go, and the circle is loading. The circle is loading. The circle is loading. Back out. Try that a few more times. Can't really tell exactly what the issue is. And shut up, Dan. And finally, I realized after about 45 minutes, I'm like, I'm just too pissed off. I'm not going to even try this. I don't know if it's like some sort of privacy setting, whatever. I've been talking about making the jump to YouTube for years. Easier to just move to YouTube. So here we are. And again, that technical thing at the beginning was literally that a wire that needed to be plugged in was not plugged in and had nothing to do with YouTube. So I apologize for that, but here we are. We're on the air now. It is a little after 7:00 on Monday, April the 20th. Please, if you're having any issues with, something that is different from YouTube versus when I used to do it on Facebook, please let me know. If it's, hey, your audio sounds different, or, when you go to a break, we can't hear it, or just whatever the issue may be. So just please let me know if you run across an issue. Other than that, we'll do things pretty much exactly the same, just hopefully with a few less technical problems. You can subscribe to the channel. That way you'll get the thing that says, hey, we're going live, or we are live, and it'll just make things easier. I'll still put up a link on Facebook every Monday night, and we'll go from there with it. And hopefully this is just a better experience for everybody all around. So we have not been on the air in several weeks, one by design, one by the, that station. My brother said, instead of YouTube, you should have gone back to Pauling, and that station is not still there. I do not know if, it was COVID. I'm sure COVID didn't help. I guess I stopped doing the show at Pauling Public Radio. I think it was fall of 18, because I think Andy and I did it from August of 15 until February of 17. And then he stopped doing it. And then I did it for another year and a half or so. And I think it was right around maybe November of 18 that I stopped doing the show there. I would have to look, but that sounds right. And like I said, it's been gone for quite a while. I couldn't find on the website when it went out or not, and that is sad. I'm not like happy that Pauling Public Radio went away. It was a good thing. I wish more communities still had, but just was not something I was going to be doing anymore. And if I wanted to go back to it now, that option would not be there any longer. So what I was saying, so we have not been on the air in a number of weeks, and I did do a little bit on the Knicks and put up on the YouTube page last Tuesday, just to sort of a 20-minute test run for a lot of this software and to establish the page and stuff like that. So we'll start with the Knicks, and the Knicks do play at 8:00 tonight, which is probably more like 8:15. My plan is, since we haven't done a show in so long, I want to go to at least 8:30-ish, depending on how things go. Maybe we'll keep going a little deeper. I don't want to miss too much of the Knick game, but since there hasn't been a show in a few weeks, I'm not just going to shut it off as soon as the Knick game starts. So we'll do it this way, and then we'll go from there. So what I want to do to get going is to start with the Knicks. And yeah, I talked about the schedule with I talked about a little bit about the end of the regular season, but we'll go a little deeper in it, talk about the first game of the playoffs, and then talk about the end of the, talk about game one, talk about the rest of the series, all of that for the next couple of minutes. There's also a ton of other stuff to get to. It's funny. I realized the 2 weeks that we did not do shows, my tone would have been wildly different each week about the Yankees, and now it would be somewhere in the middle. So we'll touch on that in a little while. The Giants also made a huge trade the other day in anticipation or in advance of the draft, which will be this coming Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The first round will be Thursday. So, we will get into all that. If you'd like to give us a call, please feel free to do so. It's 845-416-8704 is the way you can do that. And we'll just keep things rolling here. So the Knicks, we talked about the regular season a little bit, but we'll keep going with the regular season. The Knicks, since the last time we were on the air, and I guess the last time we would have been on the air, this actually is our first show in April. So in March, to finish off the sort of, we'll do the whole month of April basically, which is starting on March 31st, which would have been the day after the last time we were on the air. The Knicks lost to the Rockets 111-94. It was their third straight loss. They were down to 48-28. They were not playing really well. And then they, turned it on in a decent way to finish the regular season, or at least the portion of the regular season that mattered. They beat Memphis 130-119 to finish up the West Coast, or finish up the Southern road trip, I guess you could say. Salvage at least one game on that trip. Now, Memphis stinks. Memphis was playing out the string. The Knicks also let them back into that game, and that was not great. They then, on Friday the 3rd, played the Bulls, and they beat the crap out of the Bulls. It was like a 40-point win. It was, non-competitive from pretty much halfway through the first quarter, if that, maybe even earlier than that. So they got out to a big lead, and that was that. And then they played the two games that are the most important for our discussions, which is Thursday, April the 6th, down in Atlanta. They played the Hawks. And at the time we knew there's a real chance they're going to end up playing the Hawks in the regular season or in the postseason. It was probably not what most of us were hoping for, and still is not, although something that happened yesterday maybe gave us some cause to reconsider a little bit of that, but we'll get back to that. And the Knicks, they won this game. This game was a little bit wild because I'm not going to spend too much time recapping a game from 3 weeks ago, but the Hawks had a big fourth quarter, actually pulled ahead on the Knicks by 5. The Knicks stormed back. They tied it at 102. They hit some free throws, and then the Hawks, it appeared to bank in a half-court shot, or more than a half-court shot, to force overtime. They reviewed it. It turns out the ball was still on the shooter's fingertips as he let the shot go, was still on his fingertips as time expired. So the Knicks got lucky that game didn't go to overtime. And, given everything at that point, you're like, man, it was a nice win. It was against a team that might play in the playoffs. It was a road win. But at the same time, the way they finished that was enraging. They had a 6-point or a 4-point lead. They let up a quick 3. Made both free throws, and then let a guy throw up a 3/4 court shot that would have tied the game. If not, if there was a 1/10 of a second more on the clock, that game would have gone to overtime. But the Knicks win it. At that point, they basically wrapped up the number 3 seed in the Eastern Conference, which was kind of a mixed bag and still may be. But that rolled into the game against the Celtics on April the 9th. And, I'd been pointing to that game for months as a very important game for both teams, with the caveat that it had to still mean something. If both teams had long since clinched and nobody was playing for anything, then you could certainly argue that, if nobody important had played at all, obviously I'm not going to say, oh, well, it really matters or whatever. But even though the Celtics had basically wrapped up the 2 seed at this point, the Knicks still had an outside chance. They came into this game down 3 back of the Celtics with 3 games to play. So basically, even if they won this game, they would have needed to win the following 2 games, and the Celtics would have needed to lose the following 2 games to for the Knicks to catch them for the division. So it wasn't going to mean anything in that regard, but it was going to mean something in, just in this, it wasn't going to mean nothing either. So they play this game. It's at Madison Square Garden. Jaylen Brown does not play. So you obviously need to mention that Jaylen Brown doesn't play, but the Knicks have a very good performance. It was a really tight game most of the way through. The Knicks jumped out to an early lead. Celtics were up 3, though, at the end of the first quarter. Knicks were up 1 at halftime. Celtics were up 2 going into the fourth quarter. And as late as 7.5 left in the fourth quarter, the Celtics still had a 5-point lead, but then the Knicks really came on strong in the fourth quarter. In the last 7 or 8 minutes of the fourth quarter, they really, for the most part, took the game over. It was still a really close game until the very end, but it was, 101-101 with 3:22 left. Knicks got a 103-101 lead. Celtics went back in front 104-103. Knicks got up on a pair of Josh Hart threes, 109-104, and that pretty much iced. There was actually on the first three made it 109-104, then it was 109-106, and then Hart drained a 3 to make it 112-106, which ended the game. So again, even leaving that, you knew the Knicks were not going to be catching the Celtics. The Celtics weren't going to lose to New Orleans the next night, and they did not. They beat the crap out of New Orleans and clinched the number 2 seed. And again, you also acknowledge it's the last game of the regular. It's, game 80 of the regular season. The Celtics' best player all year, because obviously they didn't have Tatum for most of the year, didn't play. All of that aside, you do step back and you say, you know what? The Knicks beat the Celtics 3 times out of 4 this year. Now, they did not play them in a game with Tatum and Brown all year, but they only played them since Tatum came back once. They beat them at the beginning of the season. They beat them in the middle of the season when the Celtics were red hot. They beat the crap out of them up there on Super Bowl Sunday. And then they beat them at the end of the season. Again, I'm not off the strength of one game, and I promise we'll talk about that series in a minute. Off the strength of one game, I'm not advancing the Knicks into the second round. Certainly if they lose this game tonight, and last night or Saturday night rather was not a walk in the park. Knicks pulled away a little in the fourth quarter, and then even that wasn't a walk in the park, which, like I said, we'll get to. But if you indulge in sort of looking ahead for the moment, and this is the conversation I would have had if we were on the air last week or 2 weeks ago, after the regular season game, not even, because the Knicks won game 1, just talking about it in general. That's not nothing. If these two teams do end up meeting in the second round, the Celtics will be favored. The Celtics should be favored. The Celtics will have home court. They'll be the higher seed. The Celtics have been the best team in basketball really since probably January. I don't know about record-wise. Maybe a team like Oklahoma City's got them by a couple of games. At the very least in the Eastern Conference, the Celtics are having a crazy impressive year, as frustrating as that is, when you factor in what this year was supposed to be for them. Going into last year, the Celtics have played the Knicks 4 times and beaten the crap out of them 4 times. So these regular season games are not the be all and end all, but there is a little something to sort of give you some optimism about a potential Knicks Celtics matchup, which I get we are still quite a ways away from. So that, then the second to last game of the season for the Knicks, they beat Toronto, and, I got to give Basketball Reference a little bit of a hard time because they made it seem after this game that it was 100% the Knicks were going to play the Raptors. And that was about as good as you could ask for, because the Knicks had beaten the Raptors 5 times this year. They had played them because of the way the tournament was. They played them once in the tournament. They had beaten them 5 times in the regular season, and pretty badly. And you really couldn't draw up a better first round matchup at this point than that. You go into the last day of the year, and a couple of things are working against the Knicks in terms of getting the Raptors. One, the Raptors can still move up to the 5 seed. They're playing the Nets, who at their best this year were terrible and really were, even worse the last month of the season when they were playing guys you've never heard of. So you have that. Then you have the fact that the Hawks were not seemingly that interested in whether they were the 5 seed or the 6 seed. And the Hawks were playing a Miami team that needed the game at that point. They needed the game for home field or home court advantage in the 9-10 game. And maybe we'll talk a little about the play-in just because there was some crazy stuff last week. So the Hawks needed that game. So, by the middle of the third quarter of those games, those 2 games are going the way they're going. The Hawks are going to win, the Hawks are going to lose. The Raptors are going to win. So then your sort of fail-safe is the Magic and the Celtics, because due to some tiebreakers, if the Magic win, the Magic force a 3-way tie, and then it puts the Raptors back into that 6 seed where they would play the Knicks. And the Celtics are playing nobody. The Celtics are playing like their third stringer, and the Raptors get way behind. Or not the Raptors, excuse me, the Magic get way behind. And it's like, God damn it, they really can't even beat the Celtics third string when the Celtics are clearly just trying to get the game over with, and the Magic kind of have some dog in this fight to win this game, and they're really going to lose. And then they went on like an 18-0 run and tied the game at the very end. And then, of course, the Celtics hit a 3, and you go into, the Celtics win the game, and the Magic go down to the play-in round. The Raptors move up to the 5 seed in a matchup with Cleveland, and the Knicks are stuck with the Hawks, who, instead of the 5 dominant victories over that they had like with the Raptors this year, they're playing a Hawks team who they barely beat on December 27th in Atlanta, 128-125. They lost to at the Garden, 111-99 on January the 2nd. And then that game we talked about, the 79th game of the season down in Atlanta, they win 108-105. So the Knicks still won 2 out of 3 in the season series, but it's a very big difference from what we saw against the Raptors. So we'll talk about game. Excuse me. We'll talk about game 1. We'll talk about the rest of the series with the Knicks. Then we'll get to the rest of the NBA. And like I said, some of those play-in games were crazy last week, although the one that was the most crazy, both teams were out. Well, neither team made the playoffs, so didn't matter a whole lot, but we will talk about that. So it sets the stage for the Knicks and the Hawks, obviously with people's memories. And this is one of those where it's like, geez, that was 5 years ago already. People's memories of that Knicks-Hawks playoff series from 2021. The Knicks were the 4 seed, the Hawks were the 5 seed. I will say a couple of things about that. The people still doing the Trae Young thing. Trae Young's not on the team anymore. Like, it's lame to be doing the F Trae Young chants at Madison Square Garden. And I didn't hear a ton of it the other day. I heard a little bit of it. It's lame. He's gone. He's not on the team anymore. Almost nobody from the Knicks is still on the team anymore. I think the only guy left from the Knicks in 2021 was is Mitchell Robinson, because that was like the Julius Randle team. Derrick Rose was on that team. Like, they didn't even get Brunson until 2 years later, let alone Towns, let alone Bridges. Like, it's a totally different team. I think that series does stick in people's minds because of a few reasons, from a Knicks fan standpoint. One is just that Trae Young was such a villain, and it was one of those, you hate the guy so much that you'll kind of like having him. You don't like him, but you like having him as a villain. The other thing I think people got to remember about that season was, so the Knicks had, I honestly think the couple years before that were probably the darkest time for the Knicks as a franchise, because the Knicks were horrible. The whole Knicks thing really started in Van Gundy left after the 0-1 season, or a couple games into the 0-1-0-2 season. They missed the playoffs a couple of years. Isaiah came in. They made a couple of, or was that really just one? Did they just make 1 7 seed and get swept by the Nets? I think it was just one. And then the whole Isaiah era was bad, and it was embarrassing, and the team stunk, and they brought in Larry Brown, and it was a disaster. Then they finally got, playoff worthy with Carmelo and Amari Stoudemire. And they had a couple of first-round playoff appearances. They had a second-round playoff appearance. And it was sort of like, okay, well, for a long time, there was sort of the thing of like, well, once the Knicks finally get back on track and get good, they'll probably stay good. And then after that ended, they went back to being just as bad and irrelevant as they ever had been in the Isaiah era. There was, the Jeff Fisher saga and the Jeff Hornacek, who wasn't really a saga. He just wasn't much of a coach for them. David Fizdale. It was nightmare after nightmare after nightmare. And the one year they were clearly tanking for Zion Williamson, and they ended up with like the 5th pick or whatever they ended up with. I think that was when they got RJ Barrett, who was a nice player, but was not a franchise-altering player. And by 2020, they were just as bad and irrelevant. There was just as little reason to hope they would do anything again as there ever had been. They weren't even in the bubble because they were one of the, I think, 23 teams or 20 teams or whatever ended up in the bubble because they finished the regular season, and the Knicks had already been eliminated, so they weren't one of the bubble teams. And then the 2020, it's weird when you talk about this season because you say the word 23 times in a row. The 2020-2021, you actually say the word 24 times in a row. 2021 season. And again, it also was like, there's a weird tangent to go off on, but so you have COVID starts in March of 2020, and everybody kind of shuts down and locks in and, is inside and takeout and whatever. And, you're mostly staying inside. Then you had the summer, and maybe this was wise, maybe it wasn't, but I think because of, especially living in this part of the country, you could do things outside again. Restaurants opened on like rooftops or outdoor patios or whatever. And it was definitely, the summer of 2020 was definitely not normal, but it was like, okay, if it was all heading in a like straight line. And then you got to about October and cases started to really spike again. The weather started to get cold and everything shut down again. And it was basically back to like, nothing is open. You shouldn't go anywhere. I mean, I was still going to work the whole time, but like, this was the environment with which that Knicks season started. And Thibodeau was the coach. And, most of the season there was nobody there. The crowd, there was no fans in the crowd. And then they started, as the spring wore on, they started adding some people, and you could have a few thousand, and then you could be at half capacity. And by the time the playoffs started, they said for the first playoff game, the Knicks and the Hawks, game 1, the Garden will be at full capacity. And I think it was still probably masking and, in your seats and stuff like that. But like, you may have even had to show proof of vaccination. Or would that have been a little early for that? Whatever it was, but it was like full capacity. And it was like, wow, like it just kind of felt a little like, yeah, here we go. And then they lost game 1. They won game 2. And then they went down to Atlanta and lost games 3 and 4 and lost game 5 back at the Garden. And that was the end of it. And it was like, damn. That was like, it was one of those, like, you weren't expecting that team to go to the NBA finals. You weren't expecting them probably even go to the Eastern Conference finals, but you thought, hey, maybe this team can win this series and go into the next round. And, maybe just give us a month or so of like playoff basketball. And it just wasn't there. So all of that sort of combined to give Knicks fans a very bad taste about the Hawks and about Trae Young. Now it's a totally different team on both ends now. Trae Young is gone. Like I said, the Knicks roster has turned totally over. So game 1, and again, people are, I think what I said going into this, and I think I probably said it on the video I put up the other night. Yeah, I'd rather play the Raptors, but you know what? If this Knicks team is going to have any kind of a run in them, and, let's jump ahead. What having any kind of a run in them is going to mean a series with the Celtics in the second round. All due respect to the Sixers, which is probably not much based on what I saw in game 1. And my theory of any of those teams, the Sixers got the best chance to give the Celtics a series. Again, if something drastically different happens tomorrow night, I think it's either tomorrow night or Wednesday night. I'll look at that. Okay, maybe I'll change my tune, but, So this is all by way of saying from a Knicks-centric standpoint, the Hawks are a better team than the Raptors. If the Knicks are going to actually be a serious team and make noise like they're going to make a run at this thing this year, the Hawks need to not be a team that's an insurmountable obstacle for them. You know what I mean? Like they need to be the better team and handle business accordingly. I'm not saying they have to sweep them, but not only do you want to, obviously they need to win this series, but if they're life and death, basically what I'm saying is what I don't want to hear. If the Knicks go 7 games life and death with this Hawks team and they go play the Celtics, I don't want to hear this Hawks series as an excuse, because the Knicks need to be better than the Hawks. And game 1 was, again, it was interesting, and they got very little out of Karl-Anthony Towns in the first half, which was a problem. Now, Jalen Brunson more than made up for it in the first quarter. He was red hot. The teams came out and they were both shooting the lights out for a while in the first quarter, and then the Knicks just kept going. Brunson specifically, the Knicks were up 30-24 at the end of the first quarter. It was only a 2-point game at the end of the second quarter. At the end of the half, Towns was really not doing much. Brunson was playing really, really well. Bridges had hit a few shots, but they were really getting very little out of Towns. And they go into the third quarter, and the Knicks, have a good third quarter, but it's still a close game. So let me just go through what the third quarter looked like here. So yeah, the Knicks start the third quarter up by 2. They get, they're up by as many as, 6. They're up 68-60. I think they get up by 11. They're up 74-63. Is that right? No, 67. 75. I mean, so for the most part, they're up between 6 and 8 for most of the third quarter. They are up 84-73 with 30 seconds left. They're up 9 going into the fourth quarter. Certainly not an insurmountable lead, but it's one of those leads where it's like, all right, you can get this out to 15 if you start off the fourth quarter hot. And, for most of the fourth quarter, they play comfortably ahead, and then they really start to pull away. The Towns did play very, very well in the second half. You got to give credit where it's due. The lead balloons up to a 16-point lead with 5:56 left. They're up 107-8 or 103-87. And that really needs to be, okay, it might get down to 9, with a minute left, but up 16 at home, game 1 of the playoffs, Garden going nuts. That really needs to be it, especially with game 1 of last year's Eastern Conference Finals fresh in everybody's mind. I mistook. They're actually up 19 with 4:36 left. So it was actually a bigger lead with less time than I'm giving it credit for. The Hawks hit 2 free throws with 3:14 left. So still a 17-point game with under 3 minutes to go. Hawks 3, 106-92. Quick Knicks turnover, which really can't happen at that point. Hawks 3, it's an 11-point game. Another Knicks miss, another Hawks 3, and suddenly it's an 8-point game with a minute and 39 seconds left. So they're on an 11-0 run in just under 2 minutes to make it a game again. They don't even have to foul anymore. The Knicks, Brunson misses a shot, so now it's Hawks ball, down 8 with just over a minute left. So if they hit a shot here, it's a 5-point game. And luckily for the Knicks, Jalen Johnson misses a 3, which would have made it really time to sweat at a 5-point game. Knicks get the rebounds. Towns goes down, hits the shot. It's 108-98 with 47 seconds left. And that's pretty much it. They end up winning 113-102. So again, a little too much. Little too lackadaisical for a couple minutes there, whether that was taking their foot off the gas, just playing sloppy, whatever. If they were up 14 when that happened instead of 19, they might have lost the game. So, I don't want to dismiss how good a second half it was and how good most of the fourth quarter was for the Knicks, but that was very concerning. They got the final numbers on it. A lot of guys got hurt in this game. 2 guys got hit in the nuts for the Knicks. But the final numbers, Brunson had 28 points off of a huge first quarter. Bridges with just 11. Hart with 11, but 14 rebounds. Towns has 25 points, and I think 20 of them, or close to maybe 19 or 20 of them, were in the second half. Anunoby with 18. The bench rotation as we expected it would be. Robinson, Clarkson, Bridges, or excuse me, Robinson, Clarkson, Shamet, and McBride. So no Alvarado, who was the big defensive acquisition in the late at the trade deadline and kind of played his way out of the rotation. We will see if some of these guys, and I know they've only played one playoff game, we will see if he's got any plans for these guys by if they get a couple of minutes here and there. Like, do they bring Alvarado in to try to get a stop at the end of the half or something like that? Because the thing is, if you don't play these guys for weeks, and most of them didn't play down the stretch in the regular season, except the last game of the year when they rested all their, the Knicks didn't play any of their starters except for Mikal Bridges, who played 20 seconds just so he could keep his consecutive game streak alive. You can't then, and this was, I think, a problem they had with Thibodeau, not just last year, but in previous years too, where suddenly a guy who hasn't played in a month is coming in to get minutes because the thing with the knock on Thibodeau last year was in the playoffs, he stuck with his starters. Like, he did not change his starting rotation around until it was way too late and they were down 0-2 to Indiana, and it worked, but it was like, why did he do it this late? So if, I'm not suggesting the Knicks are going to change their starting lineup around. I think this 5 with those 4 off the bench is still pretty set. But if he's got any plans for anybody else to get any minutes, he's going to have to get them in there. He's going to have to find occasions to get them a minute or two here and there just so that they've taken off their swooshy pants in months when the time finally comes. So they get the 113-102 win, the first game of the series, very important. So they will now go tonight at the Garden in about probably, it says 8:00, realistically probably closer to 8:15. They will go for game 2 before they hit the road, and Thursday will be game 3 down in Atlanta, followed by Saturday, game 4 in Atlanta, and then they will come back to the Garden. So by the time we are on the air next, they will be through 4 games in this series. Best case scenario is the series is over. Worst case scenario is the Knicks are down 3-1. And then there's a bunch of other scenarios in between. Obviously, it goes without saying that the series, if the Knicks win tonight, it becomes a whole different story. If the Knicks win tonight and they're up 2-0 and they go down to Atlanta and you feel like, okay, if they can get one of these games, they come back to the Garden up 3-1 and maybe it'll be a short series. And then obviously you think about possibly going for the kill and not having the series come back from Atlanta at all. If they lose tonight, it's 1-1 and you start to think about, all right, can we hold our own down in Atlanta, get it to 2 games apiece coming back to the Garden, and now it's going to be a long series. So not to overstate the importance of one game, but the Knicks can certainly, really put the Hawks in a compromising position by winning tonight. The Garden will be fired up again tonight. You would hope they can come out and get good games from their key guys again, and away we go. So that's where we are on the Knicks. What we'll do is we'll take our first break. When we come back, we will get to the rest of the NBA playoffs. Again, everybody's just played one game, but we'll talk about the play-in tournament. We'll talk about the rest of that, and then we will go from there on this inaugural YouTube episode. You're listening to the Split Decision, and we will be right back. If this will work. All right, back here live on the Split Decision on Facebook Live here on this Monday, April the 20th, 2026. The YouTube, excuse me, we're on YouTube. First show on YouTube in our new era here after the Facebook Live era has come to an end, and we are now in the YouTube era. I'd like to imagine anybody who's going to watch us on Facebook can figure out how to watch us on YouTube, but I will, I guess, check and make sure that I'm not taking too much for granted here in the coming weeks. So I just wanted to talk a little about some of these play-in games, because these play-in games are crazy. And then we'll talk about sort of the state of the playoffs through one game. Again, you know, basically outside of one of the series, nothing that's happened should change your opinion about the series overall, and maybe even not that one. But so I just wanted to touch, I'll go in kind of chronological order, because there were some really crazy playoff games or play-in games. And, you know, I just figured we'd at least mention them. So Tuesday night, normally what happens is Tuesday is the 7-8 games, and then Wednesday is the 9-10 games, and then Friday is the 8 seed game. They mixed it up a little this year, but it was for the Flyers had a game. So the Sixers could not play at home Tuesday night because the Flyers were at home. So they just flipped those. So, because at first I was like, why are they mix and matching? But it's a good reason. So makes sense they did it that way. The late game that night in the 7-8 game, so winner gets the 7 seed, loser has to play, or, you know, gets another chance, was the Trailblazers against the Suns in Phoenix. And this one, you know, it was on late. I didn't stay up right until the end of it, but there was some craziness towards the end where I want to get the exact flow of this game, just the very end of the game. And it's funny because we've talked about this before. Phoenix was basically planted in 7th place the entire year. They didn't go up or down from November on. So you would think they would have ended up getting the 7 seed, but they didn't. So as late as it was a 8-point game with 3:31 left, Phoenix was in the lead. The Trailblazers ended up cutting it to 105-104 on a 9-0 run. They took a lead 107-106 with 1:54 left. Phoenix went back in front on some free throws. Then the Blazers took a 109-108 lead with 37 seconds left. Suns went ahead 110-109 with 32 left. With 16 seconds left, the Blazers scored to go up by 1. They fouled them. They hit the free throw. They're up 112-102, and then they end up with the steal in the bucket. So they, with a furious comeback, win 114-110 in the 7-8 game. Earlier that night, though, I have to say that nothing they did in that late game, as good of a game as it was going to compare to what we saw in this 9-10 game, Charlotte against Miami. And, you know, it's funny, after this, we were watching the end of it, and I said to Maureen, I said, you know, the funny thing is none of this may matter, because if Charlotte loses on Friday night, neither of them make the playoffs. And ultimately that is what happened in a kind of surprising way. But so this game was, you know, I think a lot of people expected Charlotte to win this game. Charlotte's been hot, but it's one of those. Can you ever really count out Miami? Miami goes into the fourth quarter up by 6. Or excuse me, Charlotte goes into the fourth quarter up by 6 points, and I'm going to pull up the fourth quarter here. Both of these. Charlotte is up, 8 points, 6 points, that kind of range for a lot of the early part of the fourth quarter. Heat go on a run, they tie it, they actually take a lead. Then the Heat are up, as many as 7. So the Heat are, went on like a 14-point swing to start the fourth quarter. As we get late here, 3:30 left, the Heat are up 6. Miller hits a 3 to make it 108-105. Hero answers, makes it 111-105. So the Heat are up 6. Bridges hits a 3 with 1:17 left. It's a 3-point game. Jamie Jaquez hits a free throw. It's a 4-point game. With 18 seconds left, Brandon Miller hits a 3, so now it's a 1-point game. They have to foul. Hero makes both free throws, 114-111. White makes a 3 with 10.8 left. He's like falling out of bounds with a hand in his face. He hits it to tie it at 114. They go into overtime. It's 114-114. They each kind of go back and forth. The Hornets are up by 5 with 133 left. They're actually up by 5 with 26 seconds left. Heat hit a 3. It's a 2-point game. Then LaMelo Ball throws it away. Hero hits all 3 free throws with 8 seconds left. So they're up by 2. And the ball, the Hornets are. They throw it away and foul a 3-point shooter. So he hits all 3 free throws. It's 126-125. It looks like the Hornets are going to blow this. And then with 4 seconds left, Ball hits a layup, makes it 127-106. Heat go all the way down the court, and from behind, Bridges blocks Mitchell's layup. And as time expires, the Hornets escape with one in a crazy. This is one of those where if you look at the win probability thing, and I say this every time it comes up that I don't fully believe how. I think they overstate some of these percentages sometimes, but it's one of those. It looks like an echocardiogram. And the Hornets end up winning 127-106. So that eliminates the Heat in the 9-10 game. Wednesday, not as dramatic. The Sixers beat up on the Magic. They ended up winning by 12, but they were, I guess you really can't even say that. It was only a 5-point game going into the fourth quarter, but the Sixers, never were truly, truly in doubt. It got to 4 points with 4:30 left, but actually it may have even gotten closer than that, but down the stretch, the Sixers did what they needed to. So the Sixers get the 7 seed, sends Orlando into the 8-9 game against Charlotte. Like I said, I was not impressed with Orlando. Most of the year, and then what we saw in the last game against Celtics. My hope was that the Sixers would win this game. I thought of those teams, the Sixers are the ones that can potentially give the Celtics a series. Did not go that way in the first game. We'll see what happens in the rest of the series. And then the nightcap was the Warriors over the Clippers. And these were two teams that, you really did not expect to see in the 9-10 game. And the Warriors won. The Clippers beat the Clippers in LA. Warriors were at a big fourth quarter. They were down. They were down like 5-6 points going into the fourth quarter. They won the fourth quarter by 11. They end up winning the game. Curry had 36 points, and you look at Draymond Green, 35 minutes, 7 points, 6 rebounds. But they do win the game. Ends a very chaotic and crazy year for the Clippers, although, the Warriors were 8 games under 500. I guess I didn't realize just how much different there was between the 9 and the 10 seed here. You had the 9 seed Warriors, or 9 seed Clippers at 42-40, and then the 10 seed Warriors 5 games worse than that, 8 games under 500. But they do win Friday night, and I will admit I did not see this coming. The Magic beat the crap out of the Hornets 121-90. And then the Suns beat the Warriors 111-96. So the Warriors season ends in the play-in round, which I feel like has happened a few times lately. And I just want to pause on that for a minute and want to look at the Warriors franchise index because they had their sort of encore when they won the title after everybody thought it was over. So let's just go through this. All right. So we know about the era where they made the 5 finals in a row. They won 3 of them. Durant gets hurt. Durant leaves. 1920, they're 15-50. They stink, but okay, it was a weird year, and everybody was hurt basically the entire year. The following year, 2021, they go 39-33. They miss the playoffs again. The following year, they win the finals. So they win the championship in 21-22. And you wonder, all right, how much more juice does this team have left? The following year, they get to the second round. They lose in the second round. The year after that, they don't make the playoffs at all. Last year, they lose in the second round. And then this year, they lose. I think the year it said they didn't make the playoffs, they lost in the play-in round. And then this year, they miss the playoffs again. So they've now been 4 straight years, 2 of them out in the play-in round, 2 of them out in the second round. No first-round losses yet, which is kind of surprising. But, Steve Kerr seems like he could be all but done. Obviously, Klay Thompson is not there anymore. Obviously, the Jimmy Butler, Kristaps Porzingis moves this year did not work out. Super great for them. Draymond Green is 36 years old. He'll turn 37 during next season. Let's see. How old is Steph Curry? Where's Curry's age? I didn't realize Curry was older than Green. Steph Curry is 38 years old. As much as you want to say, as much as you might want to say, okay, get rid of Green and try to rebuild or whatever, I don't think anybody's thinking they're going to get rid of Steph Curry. So the question then becomes, can you really do an extensive rebuild around a guy who's going to turn 39 next season? And I know he's still a good player, and he's, if a shooter can still shoot, he's valuable out there, but it's not the NBA or it's not the NFL where, Tom Brady can play till he's 45. You still have to get up and down the court, and again, I don't watch enough of the Warriors, certainly not in the last few years, to assess Steph Curry's, overall performance. But it's the Warriors are in an interesting standpoint because you're kind of handcuffed in how much you can tear it down if you're still going to insist it's Steph Curry's team. So that's going to be interesting, but it's another year where they're out really before the playoffs even start. And I guess technically before the playoffs even start. So, just kind of a little bit of an interesting thing to note. So we're left with the tournament proper. And what we have is in the Eastern Conference, you have the number 1 seed Pistons taking on the number 8 seed Magic, the number 2 seed Celtics taking on the number 7 seed Sixers, number 3 seed Knicks taking on the number 6 seed Hawks, and the number 4 seed Raptors against the number 4 seed Cavs against the number 5 seed Raptors. So let's just start with the East. We talked about the Knicks and the Hawks. The other Eastern Conference game that got played Saturday was the Cavs and the Raptors. That Raptors team that I coveted as a Knicks opponent, and watching that game or watching a little bit of that game Saturday afternoon, my beliefs were further cemented there as I watched the Cavs open up what were they up going into the fourth quarter? 4-7. Open up a 21-point lead going into the fourth quarter. They ultimately end up winning by 13. They win going away. They were really never in any danger of not winning this game. This series, actually, game 2 is underway and approaching halftime. It's the Cavs currently up by just 4 points over the Raptors with 4 minutes left in the second quarter in Cleveland. So still plenty of time left in that game, and it's only a 4-point game. But watching the Cavs just kind of dominate, and the Knicks hadn't played yet, and watching the Raptors get their butts kicked, and I'm going, this should have been the Knicks playing the Raptors, but we addressed that already. So those are the 2 Saturday games. And then the 2 Sunday games, you had the Celtics destroy the Sixers. And, if you want to tell me not to draw too many conclusions from this game, and the Sixers had to play a play-in game, and it's only game one, okay, I'll buy that, because again, my hope is that the Sixers do give the Celtics a series at the very least. I want the Sixers to win the series, to be honest, but at the very least, I hope they can give them a series and maybe make it go 6 games and challenge them a little bit and not give them much time to get ready. If it's the Knicks in the second round, I'm not putting the Knicks in the second round yet, but the Celtics were up 15 after 1 in this game. They never really looked back. They were up 18 at halftime. They're up 24 at the end of the third, and they end up winning by 32 points, 123-91. They get a 25-point performance from Jason Tatum. They get 26 points from Jaylen Brown. And again, some of the starters' minutes were down in this game because they were up so big by the middle of the third quarter. Maxey and George, both the leading scorers for the Sixers, but really a game that was not a game from the start. Game 2 of that series is tomorrow night in Boston before the series shifts to Philadelphia Friday, Sunday. I saw interesting, I think 4 of 5 days later this week in Philly are playoff games between the Sixers and the Flyers, and we'll talk about the hockey in a minute. Much different vibes around the Flyers right now than around the Sixers. So, and then the last game in the Eastern Conference Finals, you had the Eastern Conference playoffs. The last game 1, you had the Magic and the Pistons, and if you asked me going into last week, into the play-in games, and not just because they lost that 82nd game of the year, but just in general, I would have said to you, the Magic are going to lose to the Sixers, and then they're going to lose to the winner of the Hornets Heat game. Well, they lost to the Sixers, and then they beat the crap out of the Hornets. And then I would have said their, best possible matchup for Detroit. Detroit is, in an interesting position, and we saw it a little in the hockey with Buffalo yesterday until the last 10 minutes of that Buffalo game, and I'm glad Maureen is laying down in the other room right now, because if she heard me invoking that game, she'd be pretty pissed with what happened with the Bruins last night. But the Pistons are a team that they made the playoffs last year for the first time in forever. Gave the Knicks a pretty decent first round series. But here they are in a much different scenario. They're the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They have, I think, the expectations, given the side of the bracket they're on, would be that anything short of getting to the Eastern Conference Finals would be considered a disappointment. They're playing this Orlando team that's had to play twice last week, and maybe it's a rest versus rust kind of thing, but Orlando steals game 1 in Detroit. They steal home court. Orlando led most of the way in this one. They were up by 8 at the end of the first quarter. They went into the fourth quarter with a 7-point lead. They end up winning by 11, 112-101. Pretty balanced effort from Orlando starters, 23, 19, 17, 17, and 16. Cade Cunningham with a monster game, 39 points. But nobody else really, the next leading scorer was Harris with 17 points. Nobody else cracked double figures for the Pistons. So the Pistons find themselves, while not yet in trouble, that's not how you want to start the first playoff series. The first game 1, I'm going to guess it's been over 20 years since the last time the Pistons hosted a game 1, because I know last year was their first playoff appearance in a decade, or close to a decade. So it's got to be 20 years since they've had home court and they lose their first game. And I'm just being reminded that last year in that series against the Knicks, they lost all 3 games in Detroit. The Knicks won game 2. The Knicks won game 1, Pistons won game 2. Knicks won games 3 and 4 in Detroit, lost game 5 back at the Garden, and then won game 6. So 0-4, their last 4 playoff games are Detroit, and will find themselves in a situation where if they don't win tomorrow night or whatever night it is, tomorrow or probably Wednesday, they would be in some real trouble. So that's the Eastern Conference. Really just one sort of upset, I guess you could call it. Cavs back up 10 on the Raptors, by the way. In the Western Conference, you had the Nuggets and the Timberwolves in the 3-6 matchup. This was the Nuggets 116 to 105. Not a game that was really came down to the wire or anything like that. The T-Wolves had an early lead after the first quarter, but the Nuggets were up 12 going into the fourth. They end up winning by 11. So, not a blowout, but certainly not a game that came right down to it or anything. They get 25 points from Jokic, 30 from Murray, balanced effort from the Nuggets. So they win on Saturday. Also on Saturday, you have the Rockets and the Lakers. And the Lakers and the Rockets is a very interesting story, because the Lakers are a very interesting story because obviously right now they're without two of their best players. They're without Reeves. They're without Luka. So they're basically relying a lot on 42-year-old or whatever he is, 41-year-old LeBron James. 19 points and 13 assists in 38 minutes in this game, leads the Lakers to a 107-98 win over the Rockets in game one in Los Angeles. Lakers led pretty much the whole way, but never by a large margin. But they do get the solid victory there in the 4-5 matchup. And then yesterday, the top two seeds, the Thunder, rolled over Phoenix 119 to 84 in a dominant blowout. They're up 21 at halftime, 31 at the end of the third quarter. They end up winning by 35 in a real no contest game. And then on the other end, the last game of the weekend, the Spurs and the Trailblazers, Victor Wembanyama's first playoff game. The Blazers hung around for a while, but in the end, the Spurs win 111 to 98. Wemby had a big game, I believe. He ended up with 35 points in 33 minutes on 13 of 21 shooting, including 5 of 6 from three-pointer. So the home team holds serve in 7 of the 8 games over the weekend. 7 of the 8 game ones are won by the home team. The only one that was not was the 8-1 upset. The the Pistons losing to the Magic in game one. 3 games tonight. Raptors, Cavs getting close to halftime. Cavs up by 7. Knicks, Hawks, which, like we said, should be starting pretty soon. And then T-Wolves, Nuggets later tonight. Tomorrow is the Sixers and the Celtics is game 2 tomorrow at 7 o'clock, along with the Spurs and Lakers series. So by the time we are on the air next week, let's see how many games. We will be through game 4s in almost every series by the time we're on the air next week, except for Thunder Suns. I don't know if that's building availability or whatnot, but game 4 of that series will not be till next Monday. And I guess Pistons Magic too. So there is some spacing, but most of the series will be through 4 games by the time we are on the air next week. The first round takes a little while to play out, and then it starts to feel like everything's going a little more, excuse me, at a little bit better of a clip after that. So a couple minutes after 8 o'clock, let's take that first break. We'll come back. We'll touch on the hockey playoffs. We'll actually start with the Giants just to get to that. We'll try to get to some baseball. If we don't end up having time to get to the baseball, there'll be plenty of time for baseball in the future, but, we'll try to squeeze some of that in. But in the meantime, let's take that second break. You're listening to The Split Decision on Facebook Live. We'll be right back.
Charles Tyrwhitt's 100% linen range.
All right, back here live on the Split Decision on Facebook Live here on this Monday, April the 20th, 2026. When I went out to use the bathroom, I saw them doing the pregame introduction. So it seems like that Knicks Hawks game will be getting going fairly soon. And like I said, I'll truthfully missing the first quarter of it is probably not the worst thing for my stress level. I did very well through game one. As these go on, ideally they will continue to go on for a while. I for some reason, I've said this before, but something about basketball, I have to do things to manage my stress level. I think it's just the pace of how many possessions there are that I have a tough time handling basketball emotionally. I don't have a tough time handling basketball. I have a tough time handling the Knicks. And the 3 times ever LaSalle's played an important game, I've had a problem with that. But I definitely have to take some creative measures to not give myself a stroke that I don't have to in other sports. So let's talk about football, and then, like I said, we'll get into hockey because I want to at least touch on the hockey. Actually, I guess we can do that fairly quick. And right now, the Penguins and the Flyers are 0-0 early in the second period. So since the last time we spoke, the Islanders imploded. They lost, almost every one of their last bunch of games. They actually fired their coach with 4 games left in the season. They ended up finishing in 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th in the conference. Now, again, they were only still a couple of points out of, whatever. Nah, they weren't, because the Flyers finished hot. But what you ended up with your playoff series was Buffalo as the number 1 seed in the Atlantic against the number 2 wild card, which was, or actually, hang on, how the hell did that happen? Oh, okay. So Buffalo's the number 1 seed in the Atlantic. They played the top wild card, which is Boston. You got Tampa Bay against Montreal, who finished with the same point total. In the Metropolitan, Carolina against the number 2 wild card, which is Ottawa, and then Philadelphia against Pittsburgh. And the Flyers finished on some insane kind of run. And to be honest, as I was watching the Islanders kind of collapse as the late in the year went on, the Flyers were not the team I was thinking about. I was thinking, okay, first the Islanders were in it with the Penguins for the last divisional spot, and then they were in it with, you had to worry about Ottawa, Detroit, and a bunch of these teams, and then it turned out all of those teams did pass the Islanders, yes, but really it was Philadelphia. And you look at what Philadelphia did, really from late February on, 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to do the overtimes, but 1, 2, 3, and 1, 4, and 1, 4, and 2, 5, 2, 6, and 2, 6, and 3, 7, 3, 8, 3, 9, 3, 9, and 4, 10, 4, 11, 4, 12, 4, 5, 6. It looks like to me, and again, this doesn't count which of these games they lost in overtime and got points. It looks to me like they finished 18-7 their last 25 games. They rocketed up the standings. They got that number 3 seed in the Metropolitan Division and got themselves a first round playoff matchup with Pittsburgh. They then went and won the first game of that series against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh on Saturday. They won it 3-2 to take a 1-0 lead in the series. Like I mentioned, game 2 of that series is tonight in Pittsburgh as well. They're early in the second period, still 0-0. Flyers haven't made the playoffs in a number of years. I think since the first maybe the first post bubble year. That's going to be quite. There's 4 out of 5 days in Philly I think starting Tuesday, maybe like Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, something like that. There's games 3 and 4 for the Flyers, games 3 and 4 for the for the Sixers, and they're rivalry games. Sixers, Celtics, Flyers, Penguins. Now, again, the Flyers are the way they're playing, and they're hot, and they, at worst are going to be tied at 1-1 in that series. Much different environment than the Sixers, who, seems like they're probably destined for another first round exit. So much different environments, but if you're a fan of those teams, and most people are a fan, like a fun 4 or 5 days down in that area. the Bruins and the Celtics both made the playoffs, but the Celtics have home court. The Bruins don't have home ice, so they're not going to be at home at the same time. So you're not going to have that kind of run there. So that was one of the games from last night that was pretty rough. So I'm watching a little wrestling, and Maureen is watching the Bruins game on her phone against the Sabres. And, I remember saying at one point, like, yeah, the Sabres are one of those teams where, because the Bruins were up 2-0. And I remember saying, like, yeah, the Sabres are one of those teams that, they are good for the first time in a long time, but then you get into the playoffs and, like, you're playing a team that probably has more playoff experience than you. And, everybody's got expectations, and it's a different dynamic than when all regular season, kind of thinking, yeah, this might be a decent matchup for the Bruins, not knowing much, but just kind of thinking that. And the Bruins were up 2-0 a minute into the third period. And then Buffalo scored to make it 2-1 with just under 8 minutes left. And then with just under 6 minutes left, they tied it. And then 40 seconds later, they took a lead. And then Boston emptied the net, and Buffalo put another one in, and it was 4-2 in the span of about 6 minutes. In the span of 3 minutes, it went from 2-1 Boston to 4-2 Buffalo. And then this always annoys me, like, if you're a fan, like, to add insult to injury, if you're Boston, they scored to make it 4-3, but they did it with 8 seconds left. So it was like basically it had to score off the face-off if they were going to have any chance to actually win, and they obviously didn't. So the Sabres, who got outplayed for 50 minutes of the game, are able to escape with a game 1 win. We'll just go over the bracket real quick with this, and then, like I said, we'll move on. You got Colorado in the 1-4 matchup in their division against the Kings. Colorado won game 1. You got the Stars and the Wild in the 2-3. The Wild won game 1 of that series on the road, so that series is 1-0. Lower half of the Western Conference bracket, you got Vegas and Utah. Vegas won game 1. Congratulations to Utah in their second year getting into the playoffs and playing their closest geographic rival. And then the Oilers and the Ducks, that series actually does not start until tonight. That's the 2-3. In the East, we mentioned the Sabres and the Bruins. You got the Lightning and the Canadiens. The Canadiens with a game 1 win in Florida, so they are up 1-0. 2 games going on right now. You've got the Hurricanes, who beat up on Ottawa in game 1, up 1-0 again in game 2. And then the Flyers and the Penguins, as we mentioned. Flyers stole home ice in game 1. That game is still 0-0 about 5 minutes into the second period. So that's your hockey update. Obviously, we probably won't do as much hockey as we would do, NBA or anything else, but we will certainly keep an eye on it. Knick game is actually 5 minutes in already. Knicks are up 12-9, so certainly a good thing there. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and do play-by-play of a game that anybody, if they care enough about it, is probably just watching it instead of listening to me anyway. But I'm going to keep an eye on it for my own edification while I do this. Let's talk about the Giants and the Dexter Lawrence trade. Dexter Lawrence has been one of the few bright spots on this Giants team since he was a Giant. He came, I want to say his rookie year was maybe 19. Let's see, 19. So he's been on the team since 2019. So the team has been horrible all but 1 year he's been on the team, the 2022 season when they made the playoffs. He's had a couple of all-pro years in a row. He was a second-team all-pro in 22, third-team all-pro in 23. Had some injuries, missed a bunch of games. I guess he missed 5 games in 2024. Played the whole season this year in 2025. Dropped off a little bit, was a Pro Bowler in 24, but got hurt. Still he's 29. He's still not an old man. Some people are acting like, and again, I understand my age. I have entered the last month of my 30s as of Sunday, but as of Saturday, by the way, I 4 weeks from tonight actually will turn 40. Yes, I can do calls. I seems like I can. I don't think I'll have any problems. So if you want to call in, we'll try to put it up and we'll make sure that works. Just bear with me. If you can't hear me right away, don't hang up. I can try to hit some buttons. But yeah, we should be able to do calls like we did on the old thing. I don't see why not. Hopefully that's a newish comment. I didn't see that before. Hopefully that wasn't a comment that he made. Oh, I see. Never mind. I know what he's saying, that I can't do play-by-play. It's a joke from when Mike Francesa. I'm assuming that he's making a joke from when there would be a game on, usually an NCAA tournament game during Mike and the Mad Dog, or Mike's on after that. And Francesa would just start. Oh, no, hang on. All right. It was being literal with the calls. Hello? Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yeah, are you able to do calls in this format?
Yeah, it seems like it.
Cool. Yeah, no, I actually was just I was just getting in the car to drive to the gym real quick before it got too far into the Knicks game, and I was gonna call you about the Lawrence stuff, and it sounds like you're just starting to talk about it.
I am. Yeah, I was just getting into it. What before I give any of my thoughts on it, what did you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. I don't really know that I had an opinion. I just hate to see guys get traded, but it sounds like they got a pretty good haul for them from everything that I've heard.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't a haul. It was one pick, but it's the 10th pick in the draft.
Oh, okay. I thought it was more than that. The headlines made it seem more like it was like, like the Bengals give up too much for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah,
but,
unless I missed something.
Or not Trevor Lawrence, Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah, unless I missed something, I think it's just the one pick. So here's what I'll say. Lawrence is a really good player. And yeah, there are some times when teams, like I got mad when the Giants traded Odell Beckham, who ironically it sounds like maybe signing with them. But like, I get mad when bad teams are like, the only solution to our problem is to trade our only good players that the fans like. Like, I don't like that. And absent anything else this offseason, I might not be thrilled about this. Like, if we were looking at year whatever, or Brian Dable, or really any other assistant, like normal hire, I might not love this. I think the thing is, he pretty clearly doesn't want to be with the Giants anymore. And
yeah, what was the problem? Was it money or?
Yeah, I think it was contractual. I mean, I get this. It's funny because with every guy, it's money, and then they get mad because they feel like they're being disrespected, but really the money will solve the problem.
Yeah.
I guess the thing I would say with him, and he's a really good player. He's hasn't had the kind of years like the last 2 years, especially 24 when he was hurt. He hasn't had the kind of years that he had 21, 22, 23 in there. But, there's no saying he can't return to that form. He's in his late 20s now, so he's still got a few years left. But like, I guess the thing is, if you're going to give him a big contract, you're signing up for several more years, which is going to bring him into probably his early to mid 30s, probably till he's like 33 or whatever. We've seen him as an all-pro level player, and that it might not necessarily have the impact on a game absent, or on a team's win-loss record absent anything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, and then people go like, well, because Cincinnati gave him a 1-year deal, like a 1-year extension, and people like the Giants really couldn't give him that. There's no indication that he would have taken that from the Giants. He might have been okay getting it from Cincinnati for the change of scenery and whatever. Because you'd imagine if Cincinnati's given up the number 10 pick in the draft, they would have liked to sign him longer. And they didn't, because maybe he didn't. I don't know. I think the thing you have to look at is, the Giants now have 2 of the top 10 picks in the draft. We know how talent, we know how many areas they need talent, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the success rate is on top 10 draft picks, they just doubled their chance.
Good point.
Like, somebody said, well, whoever they pick will almost definitely not be better than Dexter Lawrence. And I'm like, there's a decent chance that's true, but the question isn't Dexter Lawrence what he's already done. It's Dexter Lawrence what he's going to do going forward.
Well, and you also have to factor in the fact that the guy didn't want to be there. Now, like you said, maybe a certain contract would have disabused him of those feelings, But if you brought him in disgruntled or with lingering bad feelings, then you have to factor in that would have potentially been a part of it too.
And I also thought the Giants were going to get, if they got a first round pick, it was going to be the 29th pick or something like that. Whereas, they got the number 10 pick in the draft. I think if you're also going to look at defense, and who you can pay and who you can't, they're probably going to need to pay Brian Burns soon. I don't know what Brian Burns' contract is like, but he's, he's only 27. He'll be 28 actually Thursday. So let's go ahead and say he's 28. If they're going to need to pay him, which it looks like his contract is that a player option, potential out? I don't know if that's a team option or a player option, but it doesn't really matter because he'll probably, if he wants a new deal, he's just not going to go to camp. Like, if the choice is between the two of them, I'd probably prefer to take Brian Burns, to give money to Brian Burns. And I think also you got to give this front office some grace. Or this new, not even the front office, because there's no way Joe Shane there's a chance Joe Shane doesn't have this job in a week. I'm getting a call from Andy now too. Let me get Andy on too. Hello.
Hello, Andrew.
Hello. I have my brother. I got my brother on the line as well. Dan, are you still there?
I'm still here.
And we got Andy. We got everybody on the line.
Hey, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing well, Andy. How are you?
Yeah, we don't have to talk to Andrew, do we?
Well, have you started saving up for World Series tickets yet?
Let me tell you something. When you lose 11 games in a row, there is no doubt that you're not a good team.
This is true.
It's horrible. I've been watching, and it's like yesterday, they were winning 1-0. As soon as the guy got on base in the ninth, you just knew they were going to lose. And they can't hit. They can't hit. So a guy was telling me, the Yankees aren't too good. I go, the Yankees? I go, the Yankees go in a slump, and they win 2 games out of 5. They lose 3 games out of 5. The Mets, I wasn't even going to talk about the Mets tonight because I was hoping it wouldn't come up, but I have my friend, Andrew knows my friend Joe, who's a big Met fan. He goes, it's still not too late. I go, Joe, if the Mets play well for the next 2 months, they'll be around 500. And that's if they play well.
Yeah,
I guess it's good it happened in the beginning of the year, but it doesn't matter if they're not good. When you win 11 in a row, you're a good team. When you lose 11 in a row, you're a bad team. And these player moves that David Stern made are really they made the team worse. I mean, that's the analysis, at least right now. So, but
yeah, I guess the thing is that first of all, with so many wild card teams now, it's not, it's hard to say it's over in April, but I can understand why you would say that. I guess the other
Joe said the same thing to me. I go, if they were 4 wild card teams, they wouldn't be in it. But it's just deflating, which makes me want to talk about the Giants. I called.
I'm about to hop off. I just got to the gym, so I'll, as they say in sports radio, I'll hang up and listen.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
All right.
Hi, Dan.
Okay, good.
Hi, Andy.
Anyway, Andrew.
Yes.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good.
I haven't talked to you in a while.
No.
There's 2 things I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
Regarding the Giants is that, Dexter Lawrence was pretty, as you would say, pedestrian last year at best.
Mm-hmm.
And getting a number 10 pick for him, the overall 10th, is a big deal. And I want to ask you 2 questions. I'm pretty excited about the Giants maybe signing Odell Beckham. He might have a little bit left in the tank, and we loved him when he was a rookie. So are you? Were you?
I think it would be neat. what it seems like to me, though, I think they are going to sign him. I do think they are going to sign him. To me, it's got tears a muscle in the first 3 days of training camp, and we never hear about it again. It's kind of got that written all over it to me. I mean, I'm
right.
Because here's the thing. They're not bringing him in. If they do, they're not bringing him in because of some nostalgia from 10 years ago. They're bringing him in because he's played for John Harbaugh before.
Yeah.
That's the right reason.
He was on the Ravens.
Yeah.
Right. He was on the Ravens.
So that's the right reason. Not because
the Giants yeah. I'm sorry. Did they lose Wan'Dale Robinson? Did they lose Wan'Dale Robinson?
Yeah, I think he's on Tennessee with everybody else.
That's too bad.
Yeah, but that kind of stuff's gonna happen, Andy. You're gonna lose guys, you know.
Yeah, I know. He's good. He's a good player, though.
Yeah,
you know, like.
Now the Lawrence thing to me, and I was talking about that with my brother a little bit, is like, he clearly wanted out, and I don't really blame him for wanting out. You know, I'm sure there's a dollar figure they could have given him that would have made him happy.
Yeah, he wasn't. Yeah, and his agents wouldn't even talk to Harbaugh.
Yeah,
they talked to Donna Ponte or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's a. You mean Shane? They wouldn't talk to, or they wouldn't talk to Harbaugh?
He didn't want to talk to Harbaugh. I read a story about it today.
Even though Ponte reports to Harbaugh.
Yeah, but he didn't want him in negotiations, so the agent didn't want him in negotiations, and I didn't understand that. You know, he doesn't really know Harbaugh unless he does. I mean,
the thing
I don't know.
The thing I was thinking is a couple. One, you know, let's assume in a year they're going to have to give Brian Burns some money. I'd rather give Brian Burns some money than Dexter Lawrence.
Right.
We've seen what the Giants look like with Dexter Lawrence as their best player. He's a damn good player. None of this has been his fault. I would rather have a guy who could potentially wreck a game, you know, with a strip sack and a forced fumble and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Like, I think I would rather have a more explosive player. Also, the thing that I was saying to my brother that I think is the biggest thing is, and we've seen this not work with all the first round picks the Giants have had, whatever the success rate on a top 10 pick is, the Giants just doubled their chances of getting a successful player in the top 10 this year. Now it'd be great if they get two, and it's the cornerstone of, you know, the new era of Giants football. But at the very least, let's say it's a 25% chance you get a, you know, Pro Bowl caliber player in the top 10. Well, they just doubled their chances because now they have two picks in the top 10.
Right.
So, you know.
Yeah. And, you know, but as far as two things, the Abdul Carter started playing well towards the end of the year. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping he continues to be that superstar game-changing player that we thought he was going to be. Mm-hmm. That's number one. And number two, that Jackson Dart really learns something about running with the ball and stays healthy, and he's as good as everybody thinks he is. So, and then we're going to be able, and with the new coach, you know, I'm really optimistic this year that we're going to see improvement. And I don't know how healthy Scatterboo is going to be. They're a little short at running back, the Giants. Let's be honest. If he's not going to be a dominant runner, Scatterboo. So
obviously we got to wait. Obviously, I think sometime in May the schedule will come out. You know, I think my goals for them this year is A, we see Dart continue to develop. B, they, you know, some of whoever the two guys they draft in the top 10 in a couple of days, you know, we see basically those guys, Carter, Dart, you know, we like the improvement we see on them. And then again, my goal, I don't know that they're a playoff team this year. If they are, it's probably as a 9-8 wild card who gets their butts kicked in the wild card round. I mean, I would take that.
Right.
But my goal, and again, we say this as a joke, but like, how about they be 5-5? You know what I mean? How about we be sitting there
Right.
on Veterans Day weekend, and it's like, you know, there's a reason to watch every one of these games
Right.
this year and give a shit if they win or lose, and be rooting for them to win. Like, that's a win for
Exactly.
me this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
that's
you know,
who do you think they might draft at, especially at number 5? What kind of player, or you have no idea?
I mean, I don't know much. I know they talk about that guy. I know all the mock drafts seem to have, what's his name, Downs, as is he the safety?
Yeah.
Let me see what this is, like the most recent mock draft that will have them with the 10th pick too. So obviously Mendoza's going to go 1. Everybody agrees on that. 2 and 3 will be that Bailey and probably Arvell Reese. The mock draft I have here, a lot of people like number 5 for the Giants. This draft has 3 different people. One has Caleb Downs from Ohio State. One has Sonny Styles from Ohio State. Those are the 2 names I've heard the most. Then the one has Jeremiah Love for Notre Dame, the running back. I'll be honest, I do not want them to take a running back with the 5th overall pick.
Yeah.
I-
Nobody does anymore either, and there's a reason for it.
And then the next one has the other mock for the 10th pick, this mock draft. The 2 people who didn't have them taking Downs 5 have them taking him 10. And then there's this Jordan Tyson from Arizona State, who's a wide receiver. You know, I'd like at least one defense, and then, you know, if there's a receiver in there or whatever, but like, I really don't want them to take a running back.
Yeah, and the last thing I wanted to ask you, I've been reading and or hearing that after the draft, Shane's gone.
It seems more and more likely. I don't know if they'll do it the day after the draft, because they might want to, you know, they might more want the appearance that it wasn't, you know, always going to happen the day after the draft. But, you know, I think it's pretty clear that, you know, Joe Shane is running the organization, and Dawn Aponte is kind of doing Joe Shane's job, just with reporting to John Harbaugh. So I do think Shane will be gone. I think maybe there's a chance that he stays through the season, but really behind closed doors isn't doing that much. I think that's a possibility, but yeah, I don't see how he's there much longer.
Well, the thing that I think is that if that's the case, they probably told him or asked him to stay, and he agreed to it. So
Through
it's
the
not going to be a
draft.
surprise. It's not going to be a surprise to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then you wonder why he would stay. But you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
we got something to look forward to this year. I'm hopeful.
yeah,
Anyway.
and like we said, there's no doubt who's running the organization now, and I feel more confident with this guy running the organization than I have with anybody else in a very long time. So
Yeah. And what do you think of your Knickerbockers? I've been watching them a lot this year. I enjoy them. I root for them like crazy. I just think there's something missing with this team, but we'll see.
probably, you know, you know, hopefully they can do what they need to against Atlanta, and then, you know, you hope they can somehow play their best basketball of the year against Boston.
Is the next round is in Boston though? Is it?
If Boston, yeah, the next
It's
round would be the
Boston if they
Celtics.
win.
Yep.
Okay, and then on to, I guess it's Cleveland and Detroit, right?
Most likely, yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. What do you think? You think?
I think.
I mean, Towns had a nice game the other day.
Yeah, I do think they'll get past Atlanta. This Boston team's a tall order, but there's a lot that needs to happen between now and then. So,
all right, that's pretty much it. I don't want to talk about baseball. We won't be talking about baseball much the next few months.
I don't.
Yeah. Listen, you take care, and
I'm
good
sure
talk.
I'll talk to you on
Good talk.
Thursday about the Giants.
Yeah, the draft. Yep.
All
They'll
right.
do, that should be real interesting, but doesn't mean anything until they get on the field, as we always say.
That's true. All right.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you later.
All right, be well. Take care.
All right. Thank you for the calls for both my brother and Andy. We're going to take a last 30-second
Search
break,
and play
and
Snake
then I will
in
be
the
back
Google app.
to keep it going
Just
for
type
a little while
Snake
longer.
Game.
Maybe we'll get to some baseball and wrap things up. You're listening to Split Decision on YouTube. I just happened to be out there looking at the TV in time to see the Knicks and the Hawks get into it a little, and not benches clear, but both guys on the floor kind of come together. So looks like Towns was at the center of it, or Mitch was, not Towns. It's 30 to 22 Knicks right now with just about a minute left in the first quarter. So we will be done pretty much just in time for the end of the first quarter, or the start of the second quarter rather. The Cavs have opened up a big lead on the Raptors in the third quarter. They're up 16 now. So we've talked about pretty much everything except baseball tonight. We'll talk a little about the Yankees just because we're close enough to 9 o'clock and may as well go till 9 o'clock now. You know, it's been so long since the Yankees have been, since we've done the show. So much has happened with the Yankees. Sort of the top, I think really when we were on the air last, they had played their first week of games. They played like 6 games. So the top line is right now they're 13-9. They're half a game up in the AL East over Tampa, and then Baltimore, Boston, and Toronto are all each a few games back. So not much to speak of. There's actually only, believe it or not, the Yankees have the best record in the American League because Cleveland is 13-10, and they're the only other team besides them in Tampa that's more than a game on over 500. Everybody in the AL West is 500 or below. The NL has some teams with some good records, probably most surprisingly headlined by a 14-8 Cincinnati team. God, look at the AL Central, the NL Central. Every team's got like the same record. Cincinnati's 14-8. St. Louis is 13-8. Pittsburgh is 13-9. The Cubs are 12-9, and Milwaukee is 12-9. So they've all basically got the exact same records, which is pretty crazy. So we'll talk a little about the Yankees, and then we'll wrap it up, like I said, so we can all be free to pursue a life of religious freedom and watch the Knicks. The Yankees, it's really ebbed and flowed. Flyers up 2-0 now on the Penguins, by the way. Hurricanes up 1-0 on the Senators, and the Knicks and Raptors still have not resumed play, so they are looking at who's getting what. It would appear that Mitchell Robinson got a technical foul. The Hawks did not, so the Knicks are potentially letting the Hawks go on a little bit of a run here to end the first quarter, unfortunately. The Knicks have been, really up and down. Like I said, since the last time we were on the air, they swept San Francisco. They'd actually only played 3 games since the last time when we were on the air, they'd only played 3 games. They had swept San Francisco. They started off really well. They won 2 out of 3 from Seattle. So they were 5-1 coming home. They won 2 out of 3 from Miami. They were 7-2. Then the losing began. Had we been on the air on Monday the 6th, we'd have been talking about them at 7-2 and how well they were playing. They beat the A's 5-3 on April the 7th, and then they lost 2 games in a row, without hitting again. They lost 3-2. They lost 1-0. Then they went down to Tampa Bay and got swept. So had we been on the air last Monday, we'd have been talking about them having lost 5 games in a row, having barely scored any runs, and being only a game over 500. Last week was a bit of an up and down week. They won. It was a crazy series against the Angels in New York. They won 2, they lost 2. They were lucky to win the 2 that they won. They won last Monday night 11-10. They were up 4-0. It was 4-4. Then they were up 7-4. It was tied at 7. The Angels took a 10-8 lead in the 8th inning. Yankees got a homer from Trent Grisham in the 9th to make it 10-10. And then they scored on a walk-off wild pitch in the bottom of the 9th to make it 11-10. So they won that game. They lost the next day. Mike Trout hit like 5 home runs in a 4-game series, by the way. And then on Wednesday, they won 5-4 in a game. They went into the bottom of the 9th, down 4-3, and Caballero doubled. Wells scored, and then Jazz Chisholm scored all the way from first base, or he might have been at second. Scored, just got in under the slide. Yankees won 5-4. They lost the next day, and then they had a really nice weekend against the Royals, sweeping them. They won 4-2, 13-4, and 7-0 yesterday. So the last 2 games of the series, they outscored the Royals 20-4. Off day today, and then they hit the road for actually quite a while now. They're up in Boston starting tomorrow night. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 6:45, 6:45, and 6:10. Guessing the Red Sox are doing the start early because of the weather kind of thing. Then the Yankees go down to the state of Texas. They play the Rangers for 3, and they play the Astros for 3, and then the Rangers for 3 to finish out April. So 9 straight road games now to finish out the month of April for the Yankees. It's been up and down. Obviously, some of the guys are not off to the starts you'd like them to be. I'll pull up the stats real quick. The pitching, sort of the biggest news on the pitching is just that the biggest news on the pitching is going to be that Garrett Cole is starting to wind his way back. He had a rehab start. Probably just an inning or something the other day, but him being that far along, even while we're still in April, is a good sign. I'm just trying to pull up the Yankees team stats real quick. Who's hitting, who's not hitting. So as of now, Ben Rice off to a great start. He's hitting .338, 8 home runs, 18 RBIs. Bellinger, 276, 3 homers, 11 RBIs. Stanton, 240, 2 home runs, 10 RBIs. Certainly nothing special. Judge isn't hitting great. He's hitting .232, but he's got 9 homers, 16 RBIs. Then on the other end of the coin, Austin Wells hitting just 180. Trent Grisham, 167. Chisholm, 164. Goldschmidt, 150. McMahon, who had a big home run for them the other night, but even with that, still just hitting 130. So a lot of guys, struggling through the first 20 or so games of the season. The pitching has been pretty good. I just want to go through the starters so far. Fried has obviously, been what you would hope he would be. Again, he's pitching to a 2.97 ERA in 5 starts so far, 2-1. Weathers got like his first run support in any way last week, or in his last start. He is pitching to a 3.18 ERA. just 1 and 2, but again, was getting almost no run support. Schlittler has been great, 1.95 ERA in 5 starts. And even Will Warren with a 2.49. So actually his ERA is even lower than Fried's is. So those have been the 4 guys who've started for the most part. They have finally been forced to use a 5th starter. Luis Heel has started twice for them. He has not been good. He has pitched to a 7 ERA in both of his starts. 0-1, only 9 innings pitched in 2 starts, which will let you know about the quality of those starts. Obviously, he's the one who will be on the block whenever Garrett Cole comes back. I have not looked at Carlos Rodon. Let's see what the update on Rodon is. So Cole surrendered 3 earned runs and 3 hits on 1 walk while striking out. Oh, he pitched a lot. I assumed he was just pitching like 1 inning in his rehab start. He threw in Double-A, he threw 4 1/3 innings for Somerset, 3 runs on 3 hits and 1 walk. So he's, if he's making 4 inning rehab starts, he's probably a month away. Like, he's probably not that far away. Carlos Rodon, manager Aaron Boone. Rodon will likely begin a rehab assignment following Saturday's live batting practice session. So both of those guys, let me see if they have a note about like timeline. Garrett Cole timeline. That's not close enough to being the words for autocorrect to be much help to me. Yeah, it's in mid to late May. So, we could be a month away from the Yankees rotation being Cole, Fried, Schlittler, Rodon, and then either Will Warren or Weathers, and then, one of them to the bullpen. So, Cole, Fried pitching the way Fried has pitched since he's been a Yankee, coupled with Cole, coupled with the way Cam Schlittler's pitching right now, that would be a very, very powerful top 3. So, again, I know it's early. Obviously we heard the people talking about the Mets. We heard Andy specifically, but also my brother talking about the Mets a little bit. This is an unfortunate start to the 3rd quarter for the Knicks, who were up by 10, and now it's a 5-0 run for the Hawks. See, this is what happens with me with basketball. A 5-0 run is nothing. But I'm like, oh my God, it was 10, now it's 5. It's like, yeah, that happens constantly. So anyway, like I said, we'll keep an eye on baseball. We have a little bit more time before the baseball really needs to get before we have no choice, but for baseball to give us our undivided attention. The Knicks lead is now 3, and I'm guessing we have a timeout here. But obviously there'll be a few months here where basketball takes nothing but center stage. Or baseball rather. So I think for that, we'll wrap up, especially as the Knicks are starting to go south here. I need to go out there and try to keep them in line. 7-0 run for the Hawks. I want to thank everybody who listens to the first night of this YouTube experiment. We will continue, not experiment, we're doing it on YouTube from now on. But thank you to everybody who joined. Thank you to my brother and for Andy for calling in. We will be back 1 week from tonight. We'll be 4 games in the series. Basketball, Yankees and Red Sox this week coming up. We'll see where we're at on that. And we will also have a Giants draft pick, NFL draft pick, Giant picks. Keep it busy. It's a very, very busy time of year for sports. See you 1 week from tonight. Monday to Thursday.